David Tennant's tenure playing the 10th Doctor is widely considered to be the peak of modern Doctor Who, both in terms of the quality of writing and the hype from the general public. But with Doctor Who's willingness to try something new every week, you're going to get highs and lows. This is the case in any era of Doctor Who. For every heaven sent, there is always In the Forest of the Night. For every Dalek invasion of Earth, there is The Web Planet. Same logic applies for Season 2 of the Revival series. The series premiered on April 15, 2006, running until the 8th of July of the same year. Within this season, we were treated to the heartbreaking Girl in the Fireplace, the dramatic Impossible Planet Satan Pit, the greatest piece of television ever made, robbed of all the awards but critically acclaimed amongst every single person that was ever lucky enough to grace their eyes upon it, Love and Monsters. This series also saw the return of the Cybermen, Sarah Jane Smith, the Daleks, as well as an emotional companion exit. However, this season is typically considered RTD's and Tennant's worst. This may be down to a plethora of Marmite episodes, for example, New Earth, The Idiot's Lantern, Tooth and Claw, and most of all, Fear Her. Fear Her was the final regular episode of Series 2 before the bombastic two-part finale. It aired on the 24th of June 2006, and IMDb lists it as the 10th Doctor's worst ever episode. Is it really that bad? Or just misunderstood? Let's get stuck in.
Unless you want me to draw you. Mom.
Whoa, there it goes again.
Look at the hairs on the back of my manly hairy hand.
Dale Hicks in your garden playing with your tummy and then...
Whoa, wait a minute! I'm reporting you to the camp!
The episode opens with a very unique soundtrack, more brilliant work from Murray Gold, as we see a banner revealing that we're at the London Olympics of 2012. Well, sort of. The episode quickly shifts tone, with the whimsical music and footage of a normal street instantly shifting to focus on the posters of missing children. This feels slightly jarring, almost as if those first 20 seconds were completely unnecessary. If the aim is to push abnormality onto an ordinary street, you should stress the normality of the street whilst sci-fi stuff goes on in the background. By instantly showing us that something is wrong and the girl at the window is connected, we remove a lot of the mystery, make the Doctor and Rose's investigation less interesting, simply because we already know, and have known since the 20-second mark. We then focus on Maeve, the old lady if you're wondering. The directing is serviceable here as we circle Maeve, indicating that things are going on around her within this street. We briefly circle the skies. This could have been done to emphasise that the chaos is sent from the skies, ergo an alien threat. Trish then appears on the scene, and they have an ironic conversation about doctors. This line is pretty decent, with its double meaning. It's also accurate foreshadowing of the second half of the episode where the Doctor can't help after being drawn. Well, sort of. Maeve then starts urging two kids to get inside. Edna Dore's performance isn't particularly up to standard as her urgency isn't convincing. Also, Maeve seems to state that she can feel something's about to happen. Interesting. Maybe Maeve knows more than she's letting on. Maybe she's in league with the villain. Surely this would have made for an interesting resolution. It went nowhere and was never explained. Then we see a creepy shot of Chloe's silhouette as she gazes out her windows. This gives me chills and looks like something straight out of a horror movie. As previously stated, the directing in this episode is pretty decent. I'd expect nothing less from Euros Lynn, who also worked on episodes such as The Girl in the Fireplace, Silence in the Library Forest of the Dead, The End of Time, as well as all 5 parts of the critically acclaimed Tortured Children of Earth. His directing skills are on show once again, as we see a tilted look at Trish. She's leaning on the door, signifying that she won't let anyone in, particularly to help Chloe. The tilted camera indicates that things aren't normal, they're off-centre if you will. In addition, the downstairs section of the house is lit normally, whereas the upstairs, where Chloe resides, is almost pitch black. This clearly indicates her role in the episode as the villain. The change in score as well as the slow and suspenseful zoom on Chloe while she's singing, really establishes Chloe as a threat, without any indicative dialogue necessary. These are both marks of a brilliant director and composer. We hear Chloe singing Kookaburra in a sinister tone. This is the first sign of this episode using childlike things masked with a different meaning, something I'll dive deeper into later. In this case, Chloe is taking a harmless song and making it seem sinister, the same way the Eye Solus took an innocent child and her harmless act of drawing and made it sinister. One of the children then disappears from the garden. It's hard to believe that nobody saw him vanish until the ball was kicked at the goal, but oh well. The reactions of the dad and Maeve also detract from the intensity of this scene, as they fail to sell the panic with their reactions. Finally, we see a close-up of Chloe's eyes as she draws the child who vanished. This is significant considering that eyes are considered to be windows to the soul. By having a close-up on Chloe's eyes, we're being pushed towards something potentially being wrong within Chloe, as turns out to be the case. But then there's an absolutely awful animation of her drawing. It's like me when there's 5 minutes left of an exam, and it makes me laugh out loud, just as some tension was building. Ooh, Matthew Graham. He wrote Life on Mars starring John Sim. Cool. A quick Google shows that he's also responsible for the absolute monstrosity that is the Rebel Flesh Almost People two-parter. God help me. The next 5 minutes or so are painfully boring, as the Doctor essentially just waffles about the new time period. It is weird to see episodes set in the future that are now quite far historicals. In addition, it's very obvious that this is at the back end of the series. I say this because Tennant and Piper's chemistry is on point, and their acting is effective at carrying us through some of the duller moments in this episode. And that TARDIS landing was jokes. As the pair walk through the street and the Doctor waffles about absolute nonsense, Rose notices the posters with the missing kids. It's interesting to note that there are already 3 posters here. The Eye Solus later claims to have a family of millions.
How big?
Say around 4 billion.
And Chloe has a lot of pictures on her wall. What I'm trying to get at is, how many people have been taken? The Doctor mentions it being cold as they look at the posters. Interestingly, this is done because the episode was being filmed in winter whilst being set in summer, and was a late addition to the script after they noticed actors' breath being visible within some shots. I'm not quite sure how Rose deduces that the whole street is scared to death when she sees one person put her bins out. Also, how does the Doctor get to the other side of the street in 5 seconds and without Rose noticing? This sounds like, and is, a nitpick from me, but issues like this become frustrating when they become so common, as they will later in this episode. The Doctor then feels some sort of energy in the garden. Tennant showcases the intrigue well, but it is a little bit weird for a stranger to stand in a garden where a kid went missing, laughing at his own hand. The "What's your game?" segment is painfully unfunny and could have easily been cut. Meanwhile, Rose helps a man whose car's broken down. Interesting, maybe the car's breaking down is linked to the cold, and Chloe— no, this thread never gets picked up. So why is it there? Abdul Salis is introduced as a worker for the council called Kel, and Salis gives a pretty decent comedic performance. Kel then explains all about the cars, that plot thread that never goes anywhere, whilst he spouts a ton of unnecessary exposition about the Olympics. Maeve appears again at this point and continues to be creepy and cryptic for no apparent reason. The sound has been edited well for this scene, as you can hear the Doctor talking in the background quietly before he enters the scene.
Dale, snatched in the blink of an eye.
I'm a police officer, that's what I am.
Maeve continues with her not particularly impressive performance as she goes on to talk about it being on the street and being evil, which is convenient, as that's exactly what happens. The argument between the residents of the street is typical of the RTD era, multiple characters with vastly different opinions having it out. It functions in this episode, but works much better in settings such as those of Midnight. The score shifts again after the fingers on lips. We hear some very unique music in this episode, including lots of flutes and varied drums. We then cut to an abnormal close-up of Ten as he sniffs. This sequence does a good job of showcasing how removed Ten and Rose have become from danger. This is a dangerous scenario, with the potential to already have claimed multiple victims, yet they're cracking jokes and laughing as they discover the messily smell. Next they move on to an alley where Danny Edwards was snatched. I'm not quite sure how Chloe would have seen Danny here unless she'd followed him in and rapid fire drew him, but surely she'd have been seen by someone else. Ten and Rose continue to shove more exposition down our throats until the end of this scene. Within the first 10 minutes of this episode, it's already clear to see that this is a low budget episode of the series. What's interesting though, is that it was a last minute replacement for a Stephen Fry script, which fell through just before production. Graham wrote this episode for children, with his original idea revolving around something which could suckle the beauty from the world. I think this might have worked better for the story. That's not to say that children disappearing into drawings isn't a good concept, but I just feel that Graham's original idea would connect better with the threads of coldness and the street being scared, and would also link with the feel the love resolution. You would suspect that Trish would have noticed some of the drawings move around her as she enters Chloe's room. Dale has clearly moved, meaning others are likely to be moving. If we take into account the pre-credits scene, the drawings should be constantly moving. Now, I know a feat such as this isn't possible in a low-budget episode, but if you can't film it, don't write it.
So I'm gonna join my friend. That's what he needs. More friends.
Trish is particularly quick at skipping over the fact that her daughter has drawn all the missing children and instead puts the news on. This is the first example of Trish's poor parenting. Rather than talk about Chloe's current situation, what she's drawing, which could be seen as a metaphor for her loneliness, Trish opts to focus on any and all distractions, in this case the Olympics. I'm not sure why Chloe would automatically have BBC News loaded up onto her computer. Abisola Agbajay's performance as Chloe is not great in this scene. In fact, her delivery of the
"Unless you want me to draw you, Mom,"
is unintentionally really funny. We then return to the Doctor and Rose, and to be fair to this episode, it does contain some pretty funny moments between the pair.
Look at the hairs on the back of my moaning hair hand.
beautiful boy. Thanks. I'm experimenting with that, Chloe.
No, I'm not really a cat person. Once you've been threatened by one and the nun's whimper, it kind of takes the joy out of it.
Girl, of course.
Unfortunately, as already mentioned, this episode also contains a lot of moments that aren't supposed to be funny but are. For example, I can't be the only one who notices Ten is being particularly chipper in this episode. It's not a bad thing, just thought I'd mention it. Agbajay's unconvincing performance continues when she draws the greatest piece of art ever created, a masterpiece of the modern world, an image so great that Van Gogh would quake in fear at the sight. On a real though, why is the Isolus talking like drawing extra things is to stop the kids moaning? How would they moan whilst literally being a picture? But also, I thought the Isolus is only doing this to stop being lonely.
It don't make sense.
However, it is clear that this episode is trying to make a commentary on childhood loneliness. This subtext is present later in the episode too, when the Doctor and Rose talk about the Isolus in the TARDIS. We see how two adults/parents react to dealing with a troubled kid. The Doctor wants to understand and sympathise with Chloe, a modern approach, whereas Rose condemns Chloe for throwing a tantrum over her loneliness, a much more traditional route. The Isolus in general is also a metaphor for a lonely child. Children are reliant on other people, similarly to the Isolus, which needs to be with its family and mother. The connection becomes a bit on the nose when the Isolus says,
We play.
all this is good in concept, but doesn't get developed much beyond these scenes. Graham instead tries to throw in commentary on abusive families and bad parenting in general. As a result, this thread is underdeveloped and doesn't work. But where was I? Ah yes, the goated, the greatest piece of art ever made. The scribble creature. Rose is banging on a garage door. I'm not sure how a scribble can bang. Also not sure what the scribble was trying to do to Rose. Also not sure how the scribble even exists. I was of the impression that the Isolus can still things through drawing, not create them. Because if it can create things, why not just create your family again? Also, why does the creature appear in some random garage? To add to this shit show of a scene, the creature looks awful. This sequence is dog shit and makes no sense. Ten saves Rose because he's conveniently watching her as she's attacked and knows the exact sonic setting to shrink it into a small ball and stop it flying to her. Ten starts speaking weirdly for this one scene.
Okie dokie. No problems. I'll give you a 5 if you can tell me what the hell it is, because I haven't got the foggiest. Well, that is so dinky. The go-anywhere creature. Fits in your pocket, makes friends, impresses the boss, breaks the ice at parties.
The pair take the scribble creature to the TARDIS for analysis, and God, I forgot how much I love the ambient sound of 9 and 10's TARDIS. They discover that the scribble is in fact an actual scribble. What am I saying? The Doctor then rubs out part of the scribble to reveal this. This actually looks okay, but the rubbed out part returns in the next shot. To complete the scene, Rose somehow randomly knows that Chloe is involved without seeing any evidence, and the pair have a bit of a flirt, continuing in this season's romance plot. The pair head to see Chloe not after subtly manipulating Trish to let them in. Ten saying,
Yes, I can.
is very in character for the vanity of this incarnation, a trait which comes to the fore towards the end of his run. The trio then discuss Chloe, with Trish saying a bit too much considering these are strangers. We're also given some context as to what happened to Chloe's dad, with Trish hinting that he wasn't a particularly nice guy. Oh, and am I the only one who finds Rose going into a child's room without permission after hiding in a cupboard as not to be seen a bit weird? As viewers, we know Chloe is dangerous, but for Rose, as far as she's aware, Chloe is a weird kid and her mum looks scared of her. Not exactly enough suspicion to sneak into a child's bedroom. Murray Gold's score continues to enhance this scene as Rose slowly goes into the room before opening the wardrobe and seeing the drawings move. The dramatic zoom felt unnecessary though. Again, the abilities of the iSolus remain inconsistent. Firstly, it could snatch people into drawings by illustrating them. Then it could create things to attack others. Now it can draw things in 2D on the back of a wardrobe, yet it can bang on the door and march about the house. And also, change the lighting entirely and cause wind for no reason. If the iSolus can create things, surely by drawing Chloe's dad, her dad would just exist again in some random garage somewhere. And yes, I know Chloe's dad isn't alive anymore, but the scribble creature was, in the Doctor's words.
Never living.
So what? Both the sound effects and the drawing are awful in this scene. Whilst Rose has been nosily searching a child's room, the Doctor, Trish and Chloe have a talk downstairs. This scene possesses some mildly decent parallels to real life issues. The issues in question are those of the effects of an abusive father. Chloe almost mimics how an abusive father might act towards other members of the family, controlling Trish and making her afraid, even becoming stern with Trish when she tries to hug her. This scene is one example of a decent performance from Agbaje. She really sells her being a lonely, confused child. Rose calls out for the Doctor and the trio rush to her aid. For some reason, Rose is being pulled into the wardrobe. Naturally, this never gets explained. You wouldn't think that the wardrobe is soundproofed, but somehow Chloe's dad's shouting, as well as the wind, suddenly simmers as soon as the doors are shut. I do like how the episode utilises the monsters in the wardrobe trick as a home for Chloe's biggest fear, her father. Chloe's mum's reaction to finding out about the wardrobe is also decent characterisation and helps put us in the picture surrounding why Chloe felt so alone. Trish is evidently quite dismissive and trying to forget about Chloe's dad, whereas Chloe is having nightmares and needs help to get over the trauma. Trish continues her good spell of characterisation as she finally acts as any parent would if they had two strangers snooping around their daughter, by getting angry and telling Rose to get out. Trish saying,
"I don't want to hear any more of this,"
is also in line with how she was acting earlier, as she's quick to dismiss the issues surrounding Chloe and would rather turn a blind eye than get to the root of her problems. Ten completes the scene with some more arrogance before we move to the kitchen for some real talk. Or not. In fact, why the fuck did we even move to the kitchen? Was it just for the Doctor to say some creepy lines for the trailer? We literally go straight back to Chloe's room within the next minute. The only lines of significance come from Ten, who opens up another subtext surrounding dreams and mental health to an extent. Essentially, we're shown that Trish doesn't believe that Chloe's dreams can hurt her. She's quick to dismiss them during their chat earlier and quicker to remind everyone that Chloe's dad is dead. The Doctor possesses the counter perspective, which is that her dad is very much alive in Chloe's dreams, and whilst he can't physically hurt her anymore, he can hurt her mentally. Similarly to the other deeper meanings in this episode, this is a good concept for the story, but lack of development detracts from any value this subtext could have given us. The group return to Chloe's room where Ten talks to the iSolus, and the pair essentially describe the whole backstory of the iSolus. Agbaje's performance is unconvincing in this sequence, particularly as she fits on the bed. Although I'm a bit let down that we just have more explanations again, the iSolus's monologue surrounding their family is serviceable. The whispery voice is pretty poor and typical of what you'd expect from the sci-fi genre. Throughout this scene, the iSolus is directly metaphorical for a child, even to the point of talking like one.
We play.
The idea of Chloe drawing whilst the iSolus speaks is a good way of adding more to the scene other than non-stop dialogue, but the sped up animation still looks tacky. I like how we actually get to see the iSolus arrive for a flashback. The change of lighting highlights that this was a brighter and happier time. The wall behind Chloe has noticeably less drawings, meaning that the iSolus is likely responsible for the disappearance of many things. I say this because the Doctor is being so sympathetic to the iSolus. I understand that it doesn't want to be alone, but at the end of the day, it has abducted multiple kids and other things from the street. The CGI iSolus looks surprisingly good for 2006 Doctor Who though. Chloe's dad starts banging on the wardrobe again for no particular reason. You'd suspect that if Chloe's dad is able to actually come alive, then he'd be able to break open a wardrobe door. The voice once again makes this unintentionally hilarious as Chloe shakes on the bed and the banging sound gets louder. So loud in fact that you believe the door had been smashed off its hinges. The scene concludes with Trish realising that she's been a distant mother of sorts as her child is lonely. This continues to show the effect that an abusive parent can have on their partner and child, whilst also highlighting that the abusive parent's effects last beyond their death, as Trish still needs to calm and protect Chloe from her dad, even at this time. Rose then points out the obvious, that Chloe is alone because Trish won't talk to her. At this point, these themes are starting to simply become characters stating things which are there, but then nothing happening with them until the conclusion. The Olympic TV stuff has aged very poorly. I'm surprised so much footage like this was included. Surely they knew going into the episode that this wouldn't age well. Chloe somehow follows Doctor and Rose to the TARDIS. You'd think a 900-year-old time traveller would be aware of a child following him, especially considering that Chloe is unlikely to be subtle. The scene in the TARDIS is pretty decent, but I've already covered this. The Doctor saying,
I was a dad once.
gives me chills. One thing that detracts from this episode is a lack of physical villain. Fearher's villain is metaphorical. Loneliness, bad dreams, abusive fathers. I'm not saying that these sort of ideas don't work as opposition in a Who story, but the lack of development cost this episode greatly. The Doctor's line about needing a hand to hold is well thought out, as the resolution of the story relies on Trish and Chloe holding hands. Chloe's drawings of the TARDIS and the Doctor look tacky again, but the disappearance of the Doctor, TARDIS and the Doctor's mysterious object certainly adds stakes to the episode's final act. When Rose returns to Chloe's room, she discovers Chloe's drawing, and Chloe continues talking with the whispery effects from earlier.
I love Chloe Webber.
This is unsettling, as Chloe spoke normally before the Doctor conversed with the Isolus. It feels like this was done for no reason other than to try and scare kids. Which it doesn't. Rose gets angry with Chloe, potentially continuing the metaphor of dealing with lonely kids when they act out. This connects with a resolution where love is the answer. Outside the castle, man is getting a hard on over his freshly laid tar. Again, Abdul Salis does a decent job of offering some comedy. I particularly like when he says,
I don't keep it in the van.
Unfortunately, this scene descends into complete cringe when Rose digs up the road, whilst the other bloke constantly yells, "Cancel!" It's all surprisingly easy for Rose to find the pod. Within 5 swings, she's able to uncover what she needs. Okay then. All of this, and I mean all of this, is rather convenient. Not a council spaceship, it's jokes though. Chloe then continues to reveal hidden pencils in order for her to keep drawing. Trish must really not know her daughter. She said she took all of the pencils off her, but it turns out she has about 47 hidden in her room. What the fuck? And this sequence is poorly directed and edited. Also, wouldn't Trish have taken the paper away as well? Also, why does Chloe have so much paper in her room in the first place? Aspects of this episode are so convenient. Chloe then draws the crowd at the Olympic Stadium, leading to them vanishing. This is contrived as well, with the drawing showing no individuality to each person. Not only that, but she doesn't even draw 80,000 people. I know it'd be hard to draw on set, but if you can't film it, don't write it. And as all this is happening, I can't help but think, where the fuck is Trish? Oh yes, having a quick drink whilst her daughter is abducting more people after Trish literally just had a breakdown over Chloe being lonely. The following thing she does is leave her alone. Even the presenters have disappeared when she didn't draw them, and the rest of the camera crew clearly couldn't disappear as Chloe hasn't seen them. This is getting bad. In the midst of this horse shit, I'm attempting to search for some underlying meaning, but due to the lack of growth or depth within this story, there isn't much to ascertain. The best I could come up with is that it's a parallel for lonely people becoming destructive, and therefore taking from those who have company and happiness. The writing does little to emphasise this though, and if this meaning is there, I'm sure it was unintentional. Like this story in general. Chloe, or the Isolus, then starts to draw the world. Oh look, Trish suddenly gives a fuck again. Rose smashes the door to pieces with an axe. Sorry, a council axe. As Chloe's dad starts piping up from the wardrobe again. Somehow the threat of releasing her dad from the wardrobe stops Rose from saving the entire fucking planet. The dad's voice is so funny that I can't even focus on the minimal stakes that are being built. It was funny when I was a kid, and it's certainly funnier now. Chloe's whisper voice has been mixed slightly too loud over Rose's in this scene, which is simply just wrong. No matter how loud Chloe whispers, she can't possibly be this much louder than Rose. It's also convenient that the horny dad shuts up as soon as the other characters want to say something. And then, as if things couldn't get any worse, the Doctor somehow draws the Olympic torch. How? He's a literal drawing. And shouldn't the torch now disappear? Oh, and to top it off, the news reporter suddenly gets louder and tells Rose exactly what she needs to hear, exactly when she needs it. 07 when the Olympics took place in London, but I don't remember there being so much live coverage of the Olympic torch. Am I being dumb? Let me know in the comments. Love being the solution for loneliness works in concept, but feels so cheesy and convenient in this case. It feels like more lazy writing, and it's just too easy. It's even more convenient that the torch happens to pass the street at the precise time that Rose needs it. How wonderful! Where the fuck did these crowds come from? Literally, what, 5 minutes ago? Rose dug up a road of Kel and no one was hanging around. The horny dad then puts a smile back on my face, not like that, when his stupid voice ruins the stakes again. I hate this episode. That is such a cheesy Disney easy line. It sounds like something off some TV advert.
Holidays are the most precious time of all.
Rose then proceeds to produce one of the worst throws of all time. This is followed by awful CGI on the pod and yet another convenience when the pod magically is guided towards the torch. Chloe then produces a brilliant meme with her reaction. The Isolus says goodbye before fucking off again. Not sure how it gets back to its pod within the Olympic torch without being seen by the large crowds on the street, but we move. One thing I have to give this episode credit for is its soundtrack. As was the case between 2005 and 2017, you could always rely on Murray Gold to score every episode to a very high level. Hashtag bring back Murray. Sorry, Sagan. If I'm Trish, I'd be fuming at the Isolus. First it abducted people, then it possessed your daughter, then it ruined your wall, and now it's smashing your window. But we don't hear anything from Trish about the Isolus. Another convenience, but slightly less than all the others, is everything going back to normal as soon as the Isolus leaves. The kids are back, Chloe's fine, etc. I'd rather see some actual consequences, but I can understand that runtime is a thing. Maybe if we didn't waste time on rubbish like the scribble creature and the horny dad, we'd have some time to wrap things up in a decent way. Maeve turns up on the street again. Does she have a home? And absolutely cringily thanks Rose. Then the story is wrapped up and I can finally stop watching this shit off for God's sake. Rose says all the pictures have come to life before seeing Chloe's dad is now alive. None of that happened. The pictures returned from the holding pen as the doctor described it earlier. Chloe's dad is dead, he can't return, and he was already living based on the fact that he kept coming. I would comment on the voice again, but I've already mentioned it's so bad. It's too childish, and Chloe's dad almost certainly didn't speak like that. I can't fault anything for this scene because some old bastard is constantly saying he's coming, and now he can lock doors. Not only that, but dust is falling. Is he that tall? Didn't look like it in the wardrobe. Rose somehow knows that it's only energy left over by the Isolus. Cool. I was of the impression that the Isolus needed a host, hence why everything returned to normal when it left. More plot convenience, I think. Chloe is literally a normal kid now, but somehow her not believing in her dad will make him go away. But then Rose said it's energy from the Isolus, so surely it's nothing to do with what Chloe believes. This is confusing. I don't know what to believe. I can just hear the horny dad and see red light. How are they going to resolve this thing? Get me out of this episode, man. Agatha J's performance is awful here, but it's nice to see Trish finally step up as mother. The pair singing Kookaburra is also some decent cyclical narrative, as Chloe started the episode singing Kookaburra on her own. This is important as Trish now sings with her to show how the pair have grown closer, even though we didn't really see this growth much in the episode, but oh well. This extra resolution is completely unnecessary and seems to only serve to add some extra commentary on nightmares. If it is energy left over by the Isolus, how does a song kill it? The dad's screams are hilarious though. Who's gonna hold his hand now is more cheesy dialogue, but at least connects to what the doctor said to Rose earlier. The doctor carrying the Olympic torch is so strange, but also perfectly doctory, particularly for this incarnation. Of course he'd want all the glory. Bit of a dick move though to just leave Rose without any explanation, but anything for suspense I suppose. There's some more cheese from the reporter as the doctor runs with the torch. Funnily enough, this episode sparked a petition for David Tennant to be part of the Olympic torch relay at the actual 2012 London Games. Whilst Tennant was snubbed, Matt Smith was included as part of the team. When the doctor completes the relay, the pod fires into the sky with more poor CGI. But I can't lie, Murray Gold's score is distracting me, and in a good way. The episode comes full circle, with Rose giving the doctor a ball-bearing cake and the pair hugging it out. There's more cringe dialogue like lost things being found. Rose saying we'll always be together is a bit on the nose ahead of the following two-parter, but a storm's approaching mixed with Nine's theme gets me hyped for the next two episodes. And if that's not enough, that next time trailer. Oh.
Conclusion time. Conclusion time.
To conclude, Fear Her is a story that lacks any ambition or depth. Its for kids nature subtracts from the plot, whilst constant plot convenience lowers stakes dramatically. That's not to say that Graham's first attempt at a Who script is without a few small redeeming qualities. The humour is reasonable, both intentionally and unintentionally, whilst the directing and some performances are decent. Regardless, the 11th episode of Series 2 is a one-note mess that serves only to fill the gap between the last episode and the finale. So let's break it down. The plot is abysmal, 2 out of 25. The characters were relatively poor, but some effort was made to do something of note with Chloe and her mum, 5 out of 25. The score and direction are the saving grace of this episode, 12 out of 15. The Isolus is a poor villain, and the metaphorical villains of loneliness and dreams are so underdeveloped that they don't even count, 2 out of 10. A council estate is boring, but including the Olympics is at least something for the setting, 2 out of 10. Graham attempts to discuss some decent themes, but the lack of depth leads to a painful execution, 4 out of 10. The end scene, as well as Rose and the Doctor flirting, earns Fear Her a 2 out of 5 for connection to the series arc. Overall, that's a 28 out of 10. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Sorry this took so long to make, it's just I spent hours laughing at Chloe's dad. Let me know your thoughts on Fear Her in the comments down below. Oh, and also let me know any other episodes I should review. Please like and subscribe. I'm trying to reach 100 subscribers this year for my portfolio, so I'd appreciate any support. Have a nice day, and I'll see you in a bit.